Wanted. Hopefully, I'll be stable enough as a person to welcome you in. I'm so sorry yesterday. Hey, Liberty Joe, thanks for your faithfulness. For reading the Enlo things. Those are so encouraging. Kay Schaefer, Images in Bloom, Raylene, KKPH, Tranquil, Rocket Ridgeback, DWF, Images in Bloom, Carabas, Tobin's, wow, Miss Kathy, Love Labs. Oh, wow, look, you guys, that just how happy is that? Puppies, Deb, Coom, that's cool. All right, so glad to have you here. So yesterday, I just got all involved in a family matter. Your time, and that's the way it is. I did not stream yesterday. I just got deeply involved in engaging with somebody, and then I looked up and I went, "Oh, I'm 25 minutes late," and I have just given it out. I just gave out the stuff that was in my heart. Thank you, Liberty. And I appreciate your ideas about worship relating to the warfare. That is a very powerful thing. I'm just trying to think about, incorporating words of worship into so that it's a seamless experience of worship and intercession, and at least as far as what could be done or what I feel led to do um, in our thing, because I do want to do a scope tomorrow night. But you guys, I'm going on a river rafting trip tomorrow with more of those kid people. And so I might be able to just squeeze in a scope from the car and give you an update on, and just kind of a word of encouragement or something. And I hope to do that. But some days you just realize that your voice is not the most important one in the room, and it's okay just to be quiet, right? So, in any event, here we are, and it's time to take this really strange, battered looking canvas with its weird, bloody wound in the middle and turn it into something different, to tell a different story with this canvas, and to really talk about reshaping the story, stretching the story beyond the trauma and into the new phase. And so that's what we're going to do. And hey, I have a spider in my paintbrush bottle. Isn't that interesting? He's staring back at me from the inside here. Um, and yeah, I haven't done river rafting since I was a freshman in high school. So we're going to do this, and hopefully it'll be the right amount of terrifying, right? If you notice, there's a right amount of terrifying for a roller coaster or whatever it is. You want to get your heart rate up, but you don't want to be just like miserable. So, but I'm excited. I'm kind of a little bit of a thrill seeker in any event. So here we go. Okay, so you guys remember that we were talking last time about really laying the foundations for the deeper healing and the stabilizing, and it's kind of cool. This canvas is feeling nice and firm here, even though it was slashed open. And I really did find that this set of things that I offered to you guys was just so beautifully done. Healing the wounds, the bitter root judgments, forgiveness, and inner vows, and which was a Cornerstone Ministry Cornerstone. Someone put it in there last week, and people have emailed me for a copy of this. It's really, really well laid out, and I think it's super important. But to deal with those issues so that we can move on. And today, I kind of want to explore some things. Originally I had thought be personal trauma, but the idea of national trauma, and how we bring healing to a nation, and how we bring freedom, considering how much the I really feel like we're being continually re-traumatized. Depending on how much time you spend with media, you're being continually re-traumatized and continually abused and told how afraid you should be, and brainwashed and lied to, and influenced over and over and over again, and given information that is half-baked at best, and super biased and censored at the worst, to try to create one idea of what safety is, one set of ideas about what social norms should be right now, and to beat down anybody who dares to think outside that box. I find that very, very difficult to deal with. And on a day-to-day basis, I have to reframe where I am at because I find that so alarming. And I find it so alarming that so many people are not even asking questions about that. But we are a remnant people. And the way that I see the scriptures describing how God works, it appears he's never needed a majority. He's always used the ones and the twos and the fews to make a difference. And so that gives me a lot of hope. And so now here I am thinking, how can I reframe? You can't watch much of anything anymore. That's exactly right. How can I reframe how I see the world and what's going on around us and what has been literally a global disruption and how that relates? My theory is this, my thesis is this, is that to the degree to which we remain personally traumatized by things in the past, we will project that on to our national experience and be even more miserable than we already are. Right? Even more limited and concerned and freaked out than we may already be. And so I think dealing with personal trauma, personal issues, and personal history, and reframing that and reimagining ourselves and is important because it will bleed over into every relationship. In my conversation yesterday with my family member, I realized, even though it wasn't coming from a terribly wounded place, that my husband's and my experience of being lied about publicly made me relate to the crisis of those doctors being lied about and their reputations being destroyed in a very personal way. And in a sense, it made me an advocate for their freedom, especially that Stella Emanuel lady. But I realized that my having been through it and having experienced pain over somebody lying about us publicly and making it their job to deplatform us in a sense so that they could have a power position, that left a mark. And so I'm very passionate about others, especially believers, not being reframed in the light that we usually are. I have a lot of healing in that regard, and so I don't walk around with a wound about it, but it still informs how I'm seeing and experiencing and relating and advocating for those people who are being hurt right now because they dare to speak out. The good thing is, I'll tell you, is that you can outlive it all. One of my friends said, and I'll speak to this for a minute, because sometimes trauma that we deal with really relates to, and then I'll start playing around here. Oops, that's blue. I don't think I want blue. A lot of trauma can relate to this bullying thing that we've experienced, where people take you and reframe your life and gossip about you. We had that happen in a church where this couple that saw us as a threat to their power structure. It was really kind of a Jezebel Ahab thing. They called everybody they could think of in the church to lie about us. Very, very, very painful time in life. And as I said, then there were some other people that actually publicly took us on in a different way and tried to completely reframe our reputation and got as many lies out there as they could for the purpose of a leverage in business. And it was really, really, really tumultuous. But I remember one friend of mine, hey Andrea, I remember this lady from Texas. She said, honey, she turned to her husband, she said, honey, how many times have you and I been sued? She said, because very often defamation and so forth winds up in the courts and people wind up being traumatized by the court system. And she said, honey, Glenn, how many times have we been sued? And she said, oh, more times than we can. She said, there was a time when I couldn't even go to the corner market without seeing myself splashed all over the papers. And she was basically like, you just hang out, you just live long enough, people will know who's on first, people will understand who's who, you just hang in there, it'll be okay. God, lover, it didn't make it any easier at the time, but well, actually, it did help me to know somebody had gone through it and come to the other side. And that's what we want to do with each other. We want to encourage and we want to say, you know what? Hang on, little tomato. You're not completely ripe yet. And the fruit of us hanging on is going to make a difference. And but we want to get as healed and whole as we can. One of the things that happened to me, and I'll begin to take and do something different here. Shame was a part of my experience when I was being hurt by the people in the situations I just talked about, where we were lied about by a Jezebel and an Ahab in a church, and they really went after us personally. And I realized at that time that what I would say trauma and pain, persecution and wounding really brought up deep inner shame. So what I did was I used the opportunity to go get ministry, to get delivered of a spirit of shame. And this too shall pass. That's right. So if you're in a current trauma, let's talk about the trauma in the earth right now, and the way that, just even going to the store can bring up so many painful things about feeling controlled and fearful, perhaps, and judged and brainwashed and lied to. That can catalyze you to deal with other experiences. So, in the best possible way, we wish that we could come into our experience today, hi there, with enough wholeness to be kind of plucky, right? We would like to approach what we're dealing with so much identity in Christ that we can sort of buck up under the current experience of national trauma. But sometimes it has to work the other way around. Sometimes it's the external new trauma, the external new pain and fear that winds up being our catapult to a healing we need on the inside. Doesn't that look beautiful? Don't you just love what I'm doing here? I'm stretching the shape. I'm reshaping what we're going to do with this. I've got a whole new thing. If your world is really damaged, if your soul, your totality as a person may be seriously damaged by ritual abuse, and we could repaint that world. We totally could. But what if we just completely dared to think outside the box about what was possible for even this shape? What might that change? So sometimes, as much as we'd like to get whole and healed, and it's a little weird, I can't quite see my perspective. So, we want to approach and say, well, I'm just in such a magnificent place now, that I can I can intercede and I can pray for my nation. But maybe what's happening is that some of these things that are going on for us are bringing up an inner suffocation we have to deal with, where we were shut down and where we couldn't breathe and where we didn't have space and we weren't invited to have a footprint, where we weren't invited. And I was listening, and we went to church up here this week, and God love them. What an awesome little church. The pastor just stood up and said, look, I don't care what the governor says. This is your choice or not, to mask or not mask, and we love you either way, so do what you're comfortable with. We're not going to put that on you. You have rights. Isn't that cool? And she said, you want to stay home? Stay home. But we'd love to have you here. We don't have a spirit of fear, and we're not going to allow that. And she was just the best thing ever. It was so cool. But, then we sang this song about the breath, because so I'm pour out my breath as praise. You put the breath, you guys, I forget the lyrics. You guys know that one? That because every breath comes from you, I'm pouring out my breath as praise. And All the earth will shout your praise. You know that one? You know what I'm talking about? Great are you, Lord. But it's your breath in our mouths, so we'll pour out our praise. And I was thinking the irony of that, because the devil doesn't want us pouring out our breath or our praise, and the government apparently doesn't want us doing that either. And so people are terrified of that and terrified of their own breath. And yet I was sitting there going, no, it's awesome that our breath is being poured out. It's awesome. And but some people might be experiencing it all about this that you could reimagine, or is it just a big mess up? Just wanting you to look and see. But sometimes it's the trigger or the catalyst or the stimulus of a current issue that is going to offer us the ability to reinvent and to get healed. So in the situation I told you about, where somebody, literally, they had a church meeting and held us up as heretics. Wasn't that fun? Why? Because we went to the Brownsville revival, and we took other people to the Brownsville revival. Hey, Larry. And so, literal Mr. and Mrs. Bible Answer Man at the time, Mr. and Mrs. Jezebel, thought it was really important to call everybody in the church and tell them what heretics we were and how we were a threat to the church. And then they called a public meeting, and they made us the subject of the meeting. And wouldn't you know, it was one of the most well-attended meetings in the entire town of a church business meeting. Wouldn't you know that people who never go to church meetings wanted to come to the meeting to hear about the heretics who believed in the Brownsville revival? That was me and my husband. And I was so shattered. That was traumatic. Hey, Dave, thanks for joining. The red was a healing process we went through. By the way, can I just say this, since you're there and you're asking the question, and then I'll carry on and I'll give you a happy ending to my story, and we're going to continue I might give you some examples. I know where I'm going now, but this is the disorientation of changing out of trauma. Guys, if you missed my scope on Friday, right? Please watch it. It's Healing from the Bitter Roots. It gives the recap of everything that I taught on all last week about how you deal with bitter roots, inner vows, judgments, bitter root expectancies, forgiveness. And I offered this resource, walk through this, and even ideas about walking through this with your children and your family to create a new dialogue with your kids. This is a genius sheet, and if you want it, just email me at julie.lavender@dreamfarm.vision, or you can look up the ministry that put this out has the word Cornerstone. It's Healing the Wounds, Bitter Root Judgments, and Inner Vows. I really went deep on Friday. We walked through the whole thing. We related it to the image on the canvas. All last week, I summed it up in Friday's scope. I think it was like getting rid of the bitter roots or something like that. And then I offered this, and I explained to you how even the language of this self-assessment sheet would be genius for you walking through your issues with your children and being able to backtrack and go back to your kids and say, for the first time in my life, I'm really seeing this fruit in my life. And now I recognize the wound that it came from. And where it came from, and the bitter root judgments I made based on that wound. And I think I've affected you. I think I may have hurt you. I think you might have taken this on. I want to take responsibility. I want to be free. You could offer this worksheet to your kids, to your grown kids. It was great. Thank you. So anyway, I'm just telling you, it was genius, more linear teaching. Normally I like to give vision so you have the strength to persevere. I have the ministry of edification, building up and encouragement, okay? So I like to give vision because to me, clear, invigorating vision is the single most important thing you need to be able to press through what you're going to feel in the process. So normally I speak as a visionary. But this on Friday, Please, it's going to be worth your time. So what I'm saying is, when you have a current trauma like we had, when they literally had a meeting, and all the Presbyterians, my daughter calls them Presbyterians, all the Presbyterians in this town, it was a relatively small town with very socialite people. They all showed up to watch them call us out as heretics. I was so shamed. That was a trigger. But the shame didn't come from them. The shame came from a deeper wound. So when we're going through the earth today and we're experiencing this process, okay, I'm wondering what color to take up next. What do I want to do? What do I want to do? Maybe I'll go counterintuitive here for a minute, because I like to just jump into the color, but I might need a fresh canvas. I was telling you the other day that certain colors are opaque and certain colors are translucent, and you have to have the right colors to cover other colors. So I go home after this meeting, and floppy. I want to hide. I want to die. And plus, the enemy, of course, always goes for your purpose, and my purpose was as a prophetic voice. I was also a worship leader and bringing in prophetic worship for the first time into this congregation, Berry State congregation. They destroyed that. Destroyed my sense of safety in the body of Christ. And I realized I had an issue to deal with. And so I went after the healing. It was like, you can do this to me, but I have to find out why I feel so utterly shamed. Why this goes so very deep and undoes me at a level that's even worse than what you just did to me. And so, I mean, you might as well just paint it an A on me. I'll have to fix this later because I'm not in the right perspective to see the shape. And I went and I got delivered of a demon of shame. So right now we're nationally, wow, that's really weird looking. We're nationally traumatized. And some of you are just wanting to crawl out of your skin at the suffocation and the control, or the fear that if you don't allow yourself to be controlled and do all the things that they're telling you to do, that you're not going to be safe and you could die and you could hurt other people. Or will you ever know? Can you send your kids to school allowed to speak? Are you a racist? Aren't you a racist? Is the world going to fall apart? All those things can be so deeply triggering, but I'm going to guarantee you that the deepest ones that you're dealing with right now, the deepest issues that are rising, are probably external to this. And this whole thing that has shaped our universe, and now we're reshaping, is an opportunity. Because if we're not able to pretty much, as the remnant, reset every day and re-strategize out of peace, out of settling what has God said, and if you're feeling consistently like you want to crawl out of your skin, it's not safe to be you. It's not safe to be. It is really weird looking. We're not done. But healing can be weird. This is your opportunity. This whole thing that's happening around us is our opportunity. And our hope, of course, our goal, of course, is that we then experience to the very things that Satan sent to destroy the purpose in our nation and our purpose, that those become the catalytic experiences that make us insistent that we will be free, we will be whole, we will walk in victory, we will grab our purpose, we will carry it to the end, and nothing's going to stop us. Because remember, purpose comes before trauma. Purpose is planted in you, purpose planted in the earth, purpose is planted in the nations, and Satan goes after it. And he goes after it in the worst possible way, the most evil around us. Is really getting to the core, is really getting deep, right? Onion. Is it an onion? I don't know. Around you, what's happening in, I'm not, and on one hand, yes, we're going to filter who we watch, who we listen to. Even some of my most favorite patriot people, I can't really listen to right now. I have to write children's books, okay? That's what I'm working on. And my first one's going to be released right out of that place. And I have to bring life. You have something you need to do. You have focus, you have things you have to create and do, and things that strategically use to not deal with what's fueling current panic that may have nothing whatsoever to do with the pandemic or the leverage. Ooh, cocoon. That's kind of cool. I hadn't thought of that. I'm glad you guys are seeing things. But I want you to see, is now going to be reshaped and stretched outside of the limits that we set for it originally when we approach this canvas. And that's what you're going to do, aren't you? Take stock. That's what this bitter root thing was so cool. It was a taking stock. Now I want to encourage you, and I asked you from the very beginning to do some journaling about your purpose and what were the key wounds that hit your purpose. And now I want you to take some stock of what has been really bugging you, really hitting you right now. What is the most triggering to you when you leave the house? What do you believe about that? What's happening? And is that present day or is that old news? And use that, my friend, to leverage into your healing. And then we're going to turn as people, as a remnant people. I feel like we're on the teeter-totter and we're the ones on the bottom of the teeter-totter. You sit there when you're heavier, bam, and the other person has to like dangle up there with their. We're the ones that actually have the weight in the earth, right? And we are the ones that carry the weight to shift and leverage the things of the kingdom into the earth right now. And we all have a specific assignment and we have things to be bringing forth. So our overcoming trauma is essential, not only for ourselves, but for the nations. I think to myself, if I can do what I believe I'm given the opportunity to do right now with my writing, I will influence all of a whole swath of young people. And that will leave a greater mark than maybe much of what I have done up until this point. It maybe eclipse it. And what does the enemy want me to do? Not be able to bring that into the earth. And yet it is something that I know I won't any value. I'm going to have to, and my grounding and my freedom and my love is going to create circles of influence beyond calm, receiving more healing, more love, and doing our job. Foot soldiers, just getting up every day and doing the next thing we need to do. All right? And God is working in us to transform and stretch and shape us out of the traumatized earth that once was the symbol into something that I find, this thing I'm going to paint for you is one of my favorite things ever. And it says it's symbol. But do you get where I'm headed? I may be rambling a little bit because you know what happens some days. But you need to take an inventory, get that bitter root stuff from last week and do some homework. Dare to reimagine your family stuff. And then realize that it's going to matter, and your freedom and your healing really is going to matter. Matters in the spiritual realm. And I think that because very often the enemy's plan is to make us feel so very small and insignificant compared to the wall of information and propaganda and just intimidation, that we don't realize the footprint we have in the earth. We are now 3 months away from November 4th, November 3rd, what is it? And we are in the final trimester of a pregnancy as a people. And you know what? This kind of feels pregnant to me. Right here. I didn't even think about that. That's not where I was headed, but look what's showing up on the canvas. This bulbous, growing shape is very pregnant with something. And what did I tell you last month when we talked about the middle trimester? that what is growing and is getting birthed through us, which is a rebirth of the nation, a rebirth of in us. We will bring forth something beyond even our imagination. So an internalized process of being aware of what's going on in here, and focusing and keeping our eyes on the ball, our eyes on the prize, change into the earth prevail. And I remember my midwife used to talk about how many women needed healing in order to give birth the natural way. She would talk about how sometimes a woman would stall in her birth process, or she would have an experience in the process of her pregnancy that was very, very emotionally difficult because what was happening? Old wounds were being brought up. And very often, apparently midwives are, I know I had to go through a healing process to give birth myself. And very often, it is a midwife who will help carry the woman through that to let her know her competency and her ability to bring forth something, even if she herself has been wounded. Do you see all these analogies are flowing around together, right? So that's where we are. We're preparing for birth. Things are coming up. This is our opportunity. We're getting bigger and bigger and bigger with the purposes of God, and we're reshaping out of a trauma identity. Okay? So we're going to talk more about this, but tomorrow I'm going on a river rafting trip with my daughter-in-law. She planned it, and my kids. And if I get a moment in the car, I might try a car scope, but the the signal, it's not great up here. But we will go back. We will do this. We will give birth. We will release, and you will be whole and healed and restored. Okay, Aloe Vera Lady. I'm just going to give you my email, okay, because I don't have the web address right here. Just email me at julie.lavender@dreamfarm.vision. Does somebody want to put that in here? I could do that. And I'll just send you the link. I'll put it in. Here we go. And do catch that scope, okay, from Friday. You see? It's in there now. You can do that. All right. You're guessing. Is it an onion? I don't know. Is it a cocoon? Is it a bulbous pregnant woman? I don't know, but it's no longer just being defined as a trauma, right? So that's where we're headed. That's where we're going. And I will, if I don't catch you tomorrow, I'll see you Thursday, okay? Go do something that scares you, like, don't do anything scary now, says Mr. Saxophone. Oh, there's always something scary that we can learn not to be afraid of, right? Okay. All right. God bless you guys. Uh-oh.